Hello everyone, thank you for watching or listening. If it's on YouTube, if it's on SoundCloud, this is part 3 of my story, and let it just be told that I never thought I'd be doing anything like this. I've mentioned it twice already, but to do part 3 out of a nothing story about myself and how I got into the scene and what I remember from the tail end of the DCM days and the Rogues days, going into the modern UN, into Havana, and then going on to the Temple of Dance cruises, and then you've got the Wild FM parties, then you've got the Alex K tours and all that sort of stuff. And I've basically given my introduction to DJing altogether. Then it was how I got into clubs and how I got myself to be where I'm at the moment. I think I got to a certain point. I got to about 2014 or 15 in the journey, shall we call it, of mine. So there is a lot yet to be told, and in this one here, it's going to be more so on the production side of things. How I got into production, got into music, how I got into the contacts, and just got to know all the DJs these days, like your Alex K's, your Sunset Brothers, your Rada, your Nick Skits, your Peppy, and all these others, and Rob Rizzi as well, who I saw actually at the Wild reunion the other week. And just a quick note, shout out to all the boys and girls who have come forward and make it sound like they're confessing something. That have come forward and actually just said hello and introduced themselves and tell me how much they love my music and love what I do, and I honestly really do appreciate it. If I come across as a little embarrassed or a little shy, it's because I probably am. I mean, even at 33 years old, I'm still struggling with fame, as Nick Constant likes to joke with me, posting a meme of Googling how to handle fame, because I've got a few people who actually are fans of mine. It's nice to see it, and it's not people that I see regularly that sort of you get to know them more so, and then you become fans that way. These guys and girls are actually people who I don't really know, but I don't know, they find a connection with me, and it's just nice that I get to actually live a little bit of a high life, for lack of a better term. For lack of a better term, we'll just keep it there. And people I've been meeting all over the place. I met one guy at an Eventzilla party just last long weekend, and they told me how much they loved my story. So I apologize. I forgot your name. I think it was Daniel, Jason, David, something like that. My bad. My memory is shot to pieces. But big shout out to you, and hopefully you enjoy this part 3 of my story, which is gonna go into the production side of when I first started and how I sort of like got to know what I know, and then moving along to the stoppage where I stopped producing music for a while, and then we'll go into the current climate, the current setting, all the way up to 2021, from when a certain someone plucked me out of obscurity. So I guess there is no other real way to begin rather than just, I think I already mentioned it in the first or the second my story. It was always my goal to be a producer more so than a DJ, but I ended up being a DJ first and then a producer later on. I mean, I still don't really consider myself a producer or an artist, but I guess I am. I mean, if you've got a Spotify account, a profile, you've got SoundCloud views. I mean, I still get 500-600 listens a day on multiple tracks, and even now, I think last night a DJ Saved My Life is second highest track of mine on my SoundCloud, second only to the remix that myself and Charlie Brown did of En Vogue's Don't Let It Go, which was signed to Dinky, by the way. If you didn't know, that was a big achievement for me. I thought if one day I get to have something signed on Dinky, that would be a tick off the DJ producer bucket list, and it has been. So nice to see that that's actually gained some traction. And Broken Bones as well, shout out to Dave Austin and KCB for that one. That's probably my personally, I think that's my best remix or best track, and it's sometimes the tracks that you don't really think are any good that end up being the best ones that you've ever made. So I'll talk about that later on. But more to the point, it was always to be a producer first, then a DJ second. And I first got wind of production in, I want to say it was 2003, 2004. I'll say 2003 for now. And it was basically an introduction to a program called Acid Pro, and it's now owned by Sony, so it's called Sony Acid Pro, but back then I think it was just called Acid Pro, or it was owned by another company. I can't remember exactly who it was owned by, but that was the first audio program, the digital audio workstation I ever used when it came to music production. And I couldn't do anything in it. I couldn't make melodies, I couldn't do chords, I couldn't do drum rolls, couldn't do bass lines, riffs, none of that sort of stuff. I mean, it had the capabilities, I'm sure, but very limited knowledge as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old at best at the time. I had no idea what I was doing. And all you could really do was just bootleg tracks. So what you could do is get a track, layer it out as a WAV file. I think if people have some sort of film, TV, or even music knowledge, they'll understand what I'm talking about by WAV file. It's like when you load a track into editing software, even on a phone, if you're chopping down a ringtone, and you actually get to see the waveforms of the tracks. That's a WAV file. So you get to see the waveforms on there, and you could see the peaks, see where the drop is, where the break is, and all that sort of stuff. And you start mucking around, rearranging bits and pieces, layering other tracks over the top, other samples, which effectively is how a lot of bootlegs were made back in the day. I don't want to get into the whole music production side of things, but in the 70s and the 80s, I mean, if you know anything about the early days of music production, before home studios were a thing, I mean, what I've got now is considered a home studio. A couple of sound cards, some professional monitors, a couple of screens. I've got a decent PC, a MIDI keyboard, and one main bit of software with a whole bunch of VST programs that I've actually paid a decent amount of coin for. And that's effectively a home studio. But back in the 80s, when they were first slowly coming in, you had tape recorders or multi-track recorders. What you were doing was basically playing one track, and then you're basically just playing beats over that same very track, and that's sort of like how the house music originated. I could be a little bit fuzzy on that, but there is a documentary on Netflix, I think it's called What We Made, or What We Changed, or What We Began, or something to that effect. And it stars Carl Cox and Martin Garrix with a whole bunch of other DJs, and it just goes through the origins of dance music and house music and EDM, and how that all sort of blew up. So that was basically the early days of making music. It was just layering bits and pieces over the top, and then slowly from there came sampling. So then you sample music, so you'd get like a little drum beat, a 4-bar drum beat from one thing, and then you just slice it up and just paste it over the top. And before computer programs actually got into music production, it was a bit harder. You had to do it manually via tape decks or multi-track recorders, which you had to link up to reel-to-reel tape and other bits. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, that's when digital music production really came into its own through Pro Tools. I think Pro Tools was one of the first programs that was ever used for digital music production, and I believe there could have also been some sort of early version of Logic, perhaps. Ableton, I think, came later on. So did FL Studio, which was Fruity Loops at the time, which I'll get into shortly, because that's the program that I learnt how to, learnt what to make music on, and I use it nowadays. And it was just thinking about it, this is where I really need someone like KCB to come on and have a chat. So Casey, if you watch this and you're listening to what I'm saying, by all means, let's get something teed up together and let's talk about production, and we'll get some of the other old boys as well when it comes to how you guys made music in the 90s, moving all the way through the 2000s. And I know the story of the Wild FM 11 Megamix. I think it was Wild 11. It was literally a matter of put the CD in, record, put it over the top. Next one, same thing, audio bits, complete mayhem. So could be a good conversation to have with Casey on that one there. But that was essentially the start of it. And I really couldn't do much, as I said. Then I got wind of a program called Fruity Loops, which my mate Mike's, who I've spoken about before. He's started making his own stuff as well. Came over a couple of times, gave him some pointers on how to get the key off tracks, how to do basic chords, and how to progress the instruction, all those sorts of things like that. And he's been kicking ass, been making some pretty fat, heavy bootlegs. I've been playing them. Charlie's been playing them. I've seen them on mixes on SoundCloud and YouTube as well, so it's nice to see that there are others making waves out there rather than just the same old, because it's all about freshening up the sound. Even though it all sort of sounds the same, I know it's a little bit hypocritical or ironic, one or the other, to say that, but the more people we have doing it, I think the better it is. But anyways, so that's where that came from, and it was very, very basic. You could not do, or rather you could do things with it, but it was very very limited. I mean, it was the most basic sluggish program you could use. And I know Dave Austin's spoken about a program called Mad Tracker, which sort of looked like a fancy version of a program on MS-DOS or like very, very early Windows programs, and does not look fun at all. So I have no idea how he made Feel the Bang, Rock It On, Can't Feel My Feet, Rum Shaker, you name it, all those classic bangers that we know from Dave Austin. I have no idea how he made them on this program called Mad Tracker or Fast Tracker. Same with Energize, he made some bangers on it. I have no idea how, but I guess back then they just were switched on a little bit differently. So then I got the hang of it. I learned that you could make beats. It was like a sequencer, so you could load samples into it. You could set your own BPM. Had a piano roll, so you could obviously go different keys. So start on C, for example, and then move to like I don't know, to an E, and then a G, and then to an F, and then back down again, like a progression type of thing. Or you could do chords on it, all sorts of things when it comes to production. Like literally everything you hear in music is made on a piano roll, mostly. If it's a note, if it's a melody, if it's a bass line, it's all pretty much, if it's not made strictly on the DAW, it's made through a synthesizer or a MIDI controller keyboard that's connected to that VST that you're using. And a VST is, what do they call it, a virtual synthesized something instrument, or rather, I don't even know the terms. Here I am trying to explain music production and I don't even know the basic terms. How embarrassing. But I don't claim to be an expert. I just know enough to know that I can make something sound decent. So I'm not musically trained at all either. Go figure. So that was the early entry level into actually making something from scratch, was Fruity Loops FL Studio. And I remember I was in, I want to say year 12. I'm pretty sure it was 2005. And Jimmy V, was it Jimmy V or Jimmy Z? It was Jimmy Z. I can't remember, but it was 2005. I remember that, and I did a remix / bootleg of Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back, and it was pretty heavy. It actually sounded pretty decent, come to think of it, from back then even to now. If I heard it now, it sounded like an absolute piece of shit. I would not dare play it even if I had a copy of it. I'm pretty sure I've got a copy of it on some CD somewhere lying around underneath storage, but I'm not prepared to find it or nor look for it. Don't ask me. But I remember that was the first proper thing that I ever did. And then I also got into like remixing other traditional like Macedonian songs, such as My Background. And DJ Aja at the time, he was making Maso Energy. Toddy Z was making Maso Energy. We had Macboy. We had Dan Dix and Dens in Melbourne, I think they were. And Energize also got into some Maso Energy, but he was also doing a lot of Serb remixes for Club Parada at the time, the Serbian event. So, were good times when it came to traditional music. But I remember Aja's Maso Energy, and he used to trip me out, and I would ask him, how the hell do you make this? Like, what do you do? And he said, you use Acid Pro. And I'm like, oh wow, I'm using Acid Pro, but I have no idea how to do what you're doing. Still never told me to this day. I haven't forgotten, Aja. If you do listen to this, still haven't forgotten. You never told me exactly how to go about it, but we had a little stint ourselves when it comes to music production, which I'll get to shortly. Sort of led to my first gig at Veranda Bar once I turned 18. If I didn't mention it on the last one, I'll mention it on this one here. So that was a very interesting concept to me, remixing modern energy beats with traditional Macedonian music. And at the same time, around the same time, you had Wills when he came out with Dubcare, and that was massive, and it still gets played today, and it's one of those classic hits that you'll find if we still did those infomercials late at night where you could have a 5 CD compilation of the greatest like dance bangers of the 2000s. Dabcare would be one of them. It'd be like, with hits such as Alex K's blah blah blah, Nick Skits, Will's, Dabcare. It'd be one of those ones, But wait, there's more. Order now will throw in 2 free CDs, 4 AM bangers absolutely free. One of those stupid ads. And that was just, again, mind-blowing, like to have an Arab mix like that, and it was just absolutely mental. Before that, I think the only other Arab track that was around there was probably Mario Piu and Mario Picotto, Arabian Pleasure. I know that was a bit of an Arab mix, but it wasn't as big as what the Dubcare ended up being. And then, of course, later on, Alex K remixed Ihab Tawfik's Ala Lek Sidi, and that is still played today, and everyone recognizes it when the drop comes in with the little cheeky vocal from Alex and the bass line and everything. Everyone knows what's coming. So that was that time, the 2005-2006 period of energy. It was it was an odd time because UN was open still for a few more years, and as I said, that's when Wills and Sunset Brothers got into the scene heavily after Rogues. Alex K came back from the UK and did his thing. If you haven't listened to the Temple of Dance 3 story that I recorded some months ago, I highly recommend you listen to that, because it's literally just my recollection of the Temple of Dance 3 events, but also how we got to Temple of Dance 3. I think, if I remember correctly, that's how I did. But in any case, yeah, that's worth a listen. Actually, a lot of good feedback on that one, on the big memories that people have forgotten from yesteryear. And again, this was around the same time, so 2005, 2006, and I first started really understanding how to make music after, I think it was just by accident. There was no YouTube tutorials, there was no courses available. There probably would have been at the time, but who was to know? You're 17, 18 years old in 2005, 2006, and all of a sudden now you're making music and you've got a club gig. And the first club gig I got was at Veranda Bar with DJ Aja, and we got together in a bit of a collaboration, and we called ourselves the Dance Dogs, and didn't last very long, but for the half a year, whatever it was, we did bring out some big bootlegs and some, I think, originals. We tried to remix Dave Austin's Feel the Bang, which I don't want to hear that. Sorry, Dave. I don't even remember if we were even allowed to do it or if we just did it for the hell of it. I really don't recall. I'd really love to know what the actual backstory was on that one. But yeah, again, maybe a story for another day. And we tried to do some weird things, and that was using FL Studio. And before that, FL Studio, a couple of years before that, it's progressed now to the point where it literally does everything for you. It can record, audio inputs, vocals, singing, playing an instrument, whatever. You've got unlimited access to channels. You have got a full waveform playlist, if you will, or a canvas where you can arrange everything as you want it. You've got multiple VSTs. Even the free VSTs that come with it now are almost the most professional sounding things you could really think of. What is it? The big one on Flex on FL Studio now. I think they call it the FL Studio version of Nexus. It's all pre-made sound banks, and there's such a big variety on there. You can do so much with it now. But again, back then, very, very limited. 15 years later, it's huge. It's massive. Back then, I think it was like version 5 or version 6 or something. I think they're up to version 21 now. So it just goes to show how far they have progressed as a DAW, or as a production program, or as a music tool, whatever term you want to use. And there are so many out there: FL Studio, Ableton Live, what did I mention before? Pro Tools. You've still got Cubase. You've got Reason. There are so many out there. I mentioned one beforehand. I can't remember what the hell it was now. So it was Pro Tools. It was Ableton. There was another one as well. I can't remember it right now. Logic as well. Sorry, Logic. That's the one. No Logic up here. So many programs there, but that's how I sort of like got the hang of it. And the first proper track I made on my own that I could probably be proud of and maybe still play today and maybe would get by was called, or rather is called, The Beat on the Drums. And I played it in the first My Story at the end of it, and it was only on the SoundCloud version. So if you're watching or listening on YouTube, you're going to go to the SoundCloud page and click the My Story Part 1 and go all the way to the end, the last 5 or so minutes, and that's where you hear it. That was the first track that I did. Now, naturally, these days, when it comes to making music and getting your name out there, you're gonna have to promote yourself. Today, we've got Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, Instagram. What's the other one? Mixcloud or whatever the hell it's called. There's so many different avenues. Snapchat as well, you can do it on, and you can basically get your music out, and you could become an overnight sensation, or you might just be someone who is seen in certain chapters in certain areas, or you could probably be someone who is never to be actually discovered. Just be a pure fact that there is so much out there. The market is so saturated that you have no idea who to listen to. Like, you really have to be someone special if you're really going to get anything out of music these days. So yeah, it's not as easy to make it these days as probably what it was 10-15 years ago. Now, in saying that, making it back then was probably equally as hard, because if you're a nobody coming into the scene like I was at the time, you still had Benino G and Blinky at the time, who made outsourced DJs, and now Benino just goes under the name of Outsource independently. Sunset Brothers weren't really a thing until 2005, 2006, if I remember correctly, if memory serves me right. They were always, Frantic versus Wheels, or Frantic and Wheels. Adriano, Mr. Microphone. Frantic was his DJ name when he was DJing. Wheels has always been Wheels, as far as I know, when it comes to music production and then DJing. And these guys were newcomers, and I was a newcomer as well. And at the time, the one place where we could go to where we could actually share music and just trade ideas and see what we can come up with one another was a music forum called Dirty Donkers. Now, shout out to Danny P, who I don't think he owned it, but he was running it, or he had the servers here or something at one point. And Danny P, he was just he just brought everyone together on this forum, Dirty Donkers. I mean, so many people I know today, we all met on Dirty Donkers. Andre J, for example, that guy, and I still joke with him today. If you're listening to this one's going out to you, because I told you I would talk about Dirty Donkers when it came to. Andre was that person who knew everyone at UN. How? I still don't know. Why? I still don't know either. But Andre, back then, I think like all of us, were maybe a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say he was a bully of sorts, but he was maybe protective or territorial about other people coming in. I'm not saying I was ever going to go in and take his thunder or anything like that, but when you are in a certain area and then a newcomer comes along, it's like, well, who's this person coming in to take my spot? It's like, if there's one loaf of bread and there's two people and you need that loaf of bread to take to your family, for example, well, you're going to be fighting over it. You don't want them to take it, because then you got nothing. I'm not saying it was that extreme, but it's sort of how I can describe it. In any case, Andre used to be a big smartass on Dirty Donkers, and you were never safe from Andre. He would rip anyone for anything. It did not matter what you said. It didn't matter if it was football, if it was politics, if it was music, if it was the weather. Man, it could have been about which shade of red is the best one. He would always get to you. And I remember I was putting up some bootlegs and some original tracks at the time, which I thought were originals. and he would just shit on him non-stop, and I haven't forgotten, and it makes me laugh now that I think about it. It makes me laugh how bad I used to cop it, and like I said, I wasn't the only one. He would drill anyone that was on there. It doesn't matter. It didn't have to be about music. Could have been about anything. But shout out to you, Andre. I hope that beard's growing well these days. Looks like it's a masterpiece. So shout out to Andre there. But Dirty Donkers, it was really a fantastic place that everyone could go to for music, and that's where I started sharing my music around. And that's when other people as well sort of got to a liking for it. And so much music was around the place. Alex K tracks, Sunset tracks, Outsourced tracks. Dave Austin's as well. When Dave Austin came back into it, when he did Kickin' Hard 9 in the late 2000s, he was, got back into production as well. And it was like producers in the late 2000s sort of got to a bit of a style, to my understanding and my knowledge anyway, that was good enough to play in clubs, because before that it was like, well, anyone was just donking and putting a club head behind every single track. It was off key, some beats were off time, melodies didn't match, sounds were absolute trash, but they got played because either they knew someone who was in the clubs, or they knew someone who would get them gigs at clubs. And that sort of annoyed myself, and I'm sure it annoyed people like Andre as well. Again, when someone else comes into the territory that you're in or you're trying to get into, and they're actively sort of like stopping you from making it forward, it's a bit disheartening, and it makes you want to give up. It's like, well, what's the point of me doing this if I'm not getting anything out of it? Now, going back to the whole Dance Dogs thing with Aja, we did make a couple of tracks. I ended up getting a bootleg on one of the Kickin' Hards. I have no idea how the hell that got through. My name's not on it, but I know that it was on there. I think it was a bootleg of what was it called? Every Time We Touch by Cascada. I think it was on Kickin' Hard 8 or something like that, and I think it got pulled from the shelves for some licensing issue or something, but whatever. In any case, I don't think it was because of that track, but in any case, that I did have it on there. I thought that was pretty nifty. That was pretty cool. And yeah, the music wasn't that great, but it got played. I was playing in clubs. I was playing it. Agile was playing it. A couple of others were playing it as well. And you just get a bit of a sense of like, oh, this is pretty nice. And then sooner or later, you start getting called up because there's some value that you can offer. And I was doing remixes, and I still got them. They're not bad, actually. I listen to them every now and again, like maybe every few months. I just turn them on and just press play, and I'm just like, I think back to 10, 15 years ago, and I think, what the hell is this trash, man? Like, how the hell did I get away with playing this sort of stuff in nightclubs? But it worked. I got through. I did a remix of 666's Bomba. I did a remix of, what was his name? Kevin Rudolph. Let It Rock, the hip-hoppy, rocky track with Lil Wayne from 2008, I believe, and Rob Kane played it in the UK. He sent me a video once and completely lost the video. I have no idea where it was, but he played it at like 150 BPM when the track is made at 140 BPM, but he said it was a banging track, and he played it, and appreciative of that. And just to move it along, tracks I would make, I would then play at Havana, because that's where I was DJing at the time. I was able to throw in a track here and there, see the crowd reaction, and some tracks took off, some tracks didn't. Later on in that period, before Havana ended up closing in, was it 2011, 2012 or something, or whatever it was, like it wasn't that far long after, I sort of had nowhere to play my music, and I slowly gave up. I slowly stopped playing, and I just stopped making music altogether, because, as I said, I wasn't playing it anywhere. No one was playing my music out except for myself, and if I wasn't going to play it, no one else was going to, so I just gave it up. And that would have been around 2014, where I stopped DJing in sorts permanently, and when I mean, or regularly, not permanently, regularly, and when I say regularly, I mean it was playing once or twice a month to playing once or twice every 6 months. And I thought, what's the point of playing in clubs anyways? I was getting private gigs. I was still doing private functions and weddings and christenings and birthdays. So I was still getting gigs, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't what I was passionate about. I couldn't play the energy tracks that I was making or that I loved and wanted to play, that I once upon a time used to. And I sort of just stopped doing clubs altogether. So I want to say that was about 2013, 2014. And then I stopped making music. In between all that, Dave Austin, when he got back into the scene in the late 2000s, I remember he contacted me and said like, oh yeah, you're making music, it sounds okay, it's not too bad, some bits you could improve on, which fair enough. I mean, who am I to argue with Dave Austin? He knows more about me about making music. I mean, the guy's made 10 odd bangers of old school tracks, so who the hell am I to argue? So sort of took a befriending there, did a few gigs for him at his Crowbar events back in the late 2000s, and I was playing house. I wasn't really playing energy. I think I maybe played 1 or 2 sets of energy, if I'm thinking about that correctly. If memory serves me right, I know I played more house than anything, but it was good to be able to play some tracks here and there. But he actually said to me, like, you got something about you. Keep at it, keep making some tunes, and we'll see what happens. But again, I gave it up. I stopped. So for, let's say, 3 years, I scrapped everything. I scrapped FL Studio, I scrapped Acid, I scrapped my PC, laptop, all that sort of stuff. I just got rid of everything, and I just focused on work and private gigs. That was it. That was what I was doing. Every Saturday or Sunday, or every second Saturday, Sunday, I had a private gig on, and I was making money hand over fist, and it was good, and it was, it was a good time, let's say. And then fast forward a few years, and this is probably why you all came here for, to get into the current scene. I know this is going for a while, but it's a bit of a lengthy discussion, because the production side is much more in depth than the DJing side. Especially when you know where I've come from absolutely learning nothing about musical production to where I'm at now, having 30, 50, 60,000 plays on some tracks on SoundCloud and Spotify, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. I mean, we've got other artists that have millions and tens and hundreds of millions of plays. But really, for someone like me, who never thought I'd get a track signed, who never thought I'd have a following, who never thought I'd have other DJs play my music, let alone have the fans appreciate it and love the tunes, that's special to me. That actually means something. If it was 1 listen, 1,000 listens, or 100,000 listens, they all mean something to me. So I'm always appreciative of people when they listen to the tunes and when they share it and love it. And I just say thank you, because I never thought I'd get to that point, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So from 2014 to August 2017, I want to say it was 2017. Started a new job in August, different area, different location, same industry, audio industry, as I have been since 2012. And I'm at lunch, and I get the most random phone call from Dave Austin. I'm thinking, it's 1:45 in the afternoon on like a Wednesday or a Thursday. I'm like 2 weeks into my new job. I'm still trying to get with my surroundings. What the hell does Dave want? I go, all right, pick up the phone. Anyways, so I pick up the phone. Hey Nick, yeah, it's Dave Austin. I'm like, hey Dave, how you going? He goes, not too bad, mate. How are you? It's been a long time. I said, yeah, not bad. I'm okay. I'm pretty good. Yeah, it has been a while. How you been? All right, been good. He goes, yeah, gone through some things and da-da-da, but I'm on the tail end of it myself, and everything's looking up and all sorts of good stuff. I'm like, pretty sweet. I'm happy to hear that. And it just comes out of nowhere. Why'd you stop making music? I'm like, what? Why'd you stop making music? I'm like, I don't know, just stop making music. I wasn't getting gigs. I wasn't playing anywhere. No one was playing my music, so why would I keep making it? I just gave up altogether. And he says, well, you had something about you, some years ago now. He goes, I think now you could be even better than what you were back then, and better than what you could actually ever see yourself being. And I thought, what the hell is this guy playing at? Like, what is this guy's end game? Why is he asking me to make music again now all of a sudden? Like, I haven't done it in 3 or 4 years. Not that I was any real good at it back then, but like, bro, you're asking someone, who hasn't fished in over, say, 4 or 5 years to just try and remember straight off the bat how to fish again. I mean, I'd forget how to tie a hook. I'd forget how to put sinkers on. I would forget how to cast the reel. I mean, give me a few goes, I'll get the hang of it, which is eventually what happened. But straight off the bat, very, very odd. Very, very odd. But he rings me up and he asked me that question. And then I gave him the short answer, stopped getting gigs, stopped playing anywhere, so I just gave up making music. He goes, all right, give me a call after work when you're free and we'll just have a lengthy discussion. I thought, all right, whatever. I took the chance. Now, I'm pretty happy that I did. I thought, you know what, I'll give Dave a call. Let me see what he wants. Let me see what's going on in that melon of his. So I called him back. Lengthy discussion, went for probably about an hour, maybe if not more. And the short of the long was, look, you had potential back then, and Dave did start a bit of a label, a white label called Just Donk It, where he had some of his bootlegs pressed. Outsources, first few remixes were on there as well, and he was trying to get some of my stuff pressed as well. But back then, in the 2007, 2008 time period, vinyls were sort of on the way out, very expensive. Everyone was moving to CD, and this is even before USBs came about, so don't even think about USBs at this point in time. So vinyls were the thing back then, and they were just not really happening as much. And Dave basically said, look, I'm gonna have to stop. It's just too expensive to press a vinyl, to sell it and import it and X, Y, and Z, so just gave it up. So that was that story there. But again, the short of the long, look, you had something about you back then. I reckon you should have kept going, start making music again. Let's see where this takes off. And I'm thinking, why the hell am I going to start making music again if I'm not playing anywhere? Then he tells me about the Forever Energy Facebook page that we know it now. And he's like, I want to create a page that's going to bring everyone together, and, we just share the music. And, if we share enough music, you never know, you might end up even playing at some joints again if there's a bit of good feedback, if there's a following, if there's a bit of buzz about you. And I'm like, man, I haven't made a track in like 4 or 5 years. Like, what the hell am I gonna do? I have no knowledge of anything these days. The last time I touched a program, I don't even know how to use them anymore. I wouldn't know where to start. He goes, look, just give it a crack. Give yourself a couple of weeks. Think about it. Muck around. Do what you want, and then we'll see what happens. And I thought, all right, whatever. So I got thinking. Started listening to the older stuff that I made some years ago, and I thought, there's some good elements in there. The riffs were sort of getting there. The chords, whilst they were very, very basic, they did their job. They filled in the space. They were on key. The progressions were correct. The bass lines were fat and banging. And even just some basic bootlegs like Wayne G's remix of Larger Than Life. I did that in 2008 when I was in New Jersey on holiday at my cousin's house on a random Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon. Just got the laptop out and I thought, this track needs a bit more bottom end in it, and just went over the top with it. And I still play it every now and again. It's just got a fatter bottom end. It's got a bit more percussion in there. It's a bit more driving, a bigger kick. And if you've heard Larger Than Life played somewhere, in Sydney at least, and there's been a very fat, deeper bottom end bass line on it, chances are it's probably mine. So, that was my bootleg. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll give this a go. I didn't really want to stop, but again, I explained why I stopped. I stopped getting gigs. I wasn't able to play my music, so why would I bother playing? Anyways, I start looking up YouTube tutorials, how to use FL Studio, because last time I used it, it was called Fruity Loops. Now it's FL Studio all of a sudden. Well, this is news to me. And some of the parameters, the interface, a lot of it had changed, and I have no idea where to start with this. So first thing I did was download the demo version. Again, downloaded the demo version. I got into the basics on where things are, how they work, how to go about it, and a lot of it was still the same, but as it much was the same, a lot of things were different as well. As I said before that, the waveform playlist or the canvas, it was just squares. Like each track was its own little square for your kick, clap, hi-hat, drums, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Now you could actually see the waveforms all together, which made it much, much easier. And I thought, well, that's pretty nifty. It's about time they put this in there. Because I was making my beats and bass lines and everything else in FL Studio, exporting them track by track, and then putting them together in Acid Pro, because that was the easiest thing for me. In hindsight, maybe if I just applied myself a little bit more with FL Studio, I maybe would have gotten somewhere that was much better and beneficial for me in the long run. But yeah, it's history now. Anyways, I downloaded it, got the hang of it again, started mucking around with it. And I think I came across a couple of tutorials on, I think they were like how to make an EDM banger in 5 minutes or something. I'm like, oh, let's watch and see what people are doing these days. And just the sheer simplicity of the production side. I mean, you open up a VST or a synth, you pick the sound that you think is going to work or that suits what you're going for in your mind, you try and replicate it. So it's like the artist, before they paint the landscape on a canvas, they have to envision it in their head, and then they have to start somewhere. So they start with the base, then they fill that in, then they start with some of the outer features, then they fill that in, then they start with like the accentuated features, and then that completes the product and things like that. Same when you're making music, you start with a foundation, whether that be a chord structure or a bass line. It may be drums and percussion, it could be percussion itself, it could be a melody that you come up with and then you build around that melody. I mean, there's so many different variants, but you always start with the bass. Doesn't matter what your bass is, you always start with the bass, bass line, a melody, chord progression, and then you build from there. And I thought, man, these guys are freaks. These guys are putting shit together in 5 minutes, and I'm struggling to put a chord pattern together in 30 minutes. Like, what the hell? And you watch it, and I'm thinking, I'm still making everything from scratch myself. These guys are using pre-made samples and loops and effects and all sorts of things. And I'm thinking to myself, why the hell am I not using that? But in my head, I'm thinking, I'm taking the easy route. I'm cheating. I'm literally not making things from scratch. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, man, this isn't the late 90s where you have to make everything from scratch from the synthesizer that you've got. You have to actually pick and choose sounds back then. You'd have to listen to and fine tune everything to get it how you wanted to. Now, it's all pre-made for you. Sample packs, thousands and thousands and thousands of sounds, kicks, claps, hi-hats, crashes, reverse crashes, you've got sweeps, you've got down filters, up filters, random effects, you've got all sorts of bass lines, you've got special sounds, pre-made melodies, chord structures, everything is there for you. You just have to literally put it together. It's like Lego blocks. The Lego blocks are made for you. You just have to put them together and make something. Whereas before, I was like, okay, I need to make the Lego blocks and then make the Lego blocks and make them something. And I was thinking to myself, I'm working smarter, not harder. I need to simplify how I'm going about things. So then I got into the sample packs. Hey man, it is what it is. I don't hate people that use sample packs. I know a lot of people that use sample packs, and if it works for them, man, it works for them. I started using the sample packs. The only thing I used the sample packs for, though, were for the effects. So the sweeps, the ups, the downs, also some random effects here and there. Sometimes you'd find a nice drum roll that was already pre-made, and the percussive loops. I'd always look for kicks and claps and hi-hats myself. That's one thing I've always wanted to do. I didn't want to just literally copy paste everything or use everything from a sample pack. Some things that I couldn't replicate myself or do myself, I would always use, and that's what I do, and that's the honest truth. I'm trying not to give away any production secrets here, but I mean, it is what it is. I ain't gonna lie about it. So that's how I started going into that then. I'm like, okay, this makes it easier. Now I've got a bed for my track. I've got drums, I've got percussion, I've got all that sort of shit, cool, no dramas. Now where do I go from here? Start with bass lines. Okay, I got myself a nice bass line, give it a progression. Now it comes to putting chords together. And as embarrassing as it is to say, I didn't understand chords until 2017. And that is a very embarrassing thing to say for someone who has been involved in music for 15 years almost. And I remember when we spoke to Energize on the Forever Energy podcast, when we were doing that for a while, and what he said will always stick with me. And if you are a producer in production or getting into production, he said something very, very important. He says, so long as you've got, I'm paraphrasing here, so long as you know your chord structure or can write chords, you will never fail. Because once you get a chord structure in place, you can get your bass line out of it, you can get your melody out of it, you can get riffs out of it, you can get counter melodies out of it, you can get a vocal hook out of everything. Chords are musical life. Chords are musical life. Now, what are chords? For those listening, it's normally a 3 to 4 to 5 notes, basically, how do you say it? Well, it's 3 to 4 to 5 notes played at the same time. So, for example, looking at my MIDI controller, which is in front of me, which you can't see. If I moved it, I'll be knocking things everywhere, so I'm not going to. But if you hit, they would say D, F, and A keys at the same time, bang, that's a chord. You could hit F sharp, G sharp, and C. Again, that's another chord. Or you can do D, F, A, C. That's again another chord. And I had no idea about chords or structures or progressions, but now I do. And that is a big part of why my music has improved. And if I knew chords back in the mid to late 2000s, my music would have been much better. I maybe would have had more gigs out of it. I would have had other DJs playing it. It's not to say I would have, but maybe. There's always a possibility, because the product, I believe, would have been much better, and it would have been more pleasing to everyone's ears to hear. Not to say my older stuff was crap or anything, but it just wasn't up to scratch. It was better now than what it was back then. And once I got the hang of the chords, then it was time to actually do something. So I did a couple of bootlegs just to get myself back out there, just to really get a feel for everything. And the first track when I really got back into it in 2017, or was it 2018? I can't remember. I think it was December 20. No, it was late 2017. I remember late 2017. It was Fragma, Every Time You Need Me, and I thought, everyone had done Toka's Miracle before. I was sick to death of it. I still ended up doing it myself somehow, but I did Every Time You Need Me, and just gave it a bit of a organ bass line, a very simple chord structure, again following the original chord pattern, and also gave it a bit of a riff and a melody in there, and it ended up being a nice little tidy banger. And shout out to the people who absolutely love it. I know there's a few people out there that it's their favorite track of mine, which technically ain't mine. It's a bootleg, but as Toski and Wollongong says, it's not just a bootleg, it's a designer bootleg, because there's a lot of work put involved. It's not just put a bass line over the top and off you go. There is a bit more to it. So anyways, that was the first big track, or first track rather, getting back into it. And then Dave says to me, look, I think you got the hang of it now. You've done a couple of bootlegs. They seem to be working well. Do you want to remix a track of mine? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a crack. Why not? So I got nothing to lose. And he says, I released it some years ago, didn't really take off. Here's the acapella, make something with it. And I'm like, all right, cool, no dramas. And he says, you know what, if you make something with it, we will put it on Nick Skitz's label, LNG Music. And I was just like, holy shit, man, I can have something that I've made signed on a label? I'm like, hell yeah, man, sign me up, because I never had a track signed on a label before. This was madness. So anyways, I did it. The track was called Passion, and it was released as ABCD Passion Nick Nova Remix, and also Energize did a remix for it as well. And in the remix, I made it to a style and a sound that would sort of later be known to be my style or sound. Even though I don't really think I have a style or sound, I think it is obvious to know that every DJ has a style or sound. You hear an Alex K track, you know it's Alex K. You hear Sunset, you know it's Sunset. You hear Outsource, you know it's Outsource. You hear 2573, no, it's 2573. And it was one of those things that now it just seems to be complete. You hear a track or a drop and you know exactly who made it. So, I mean, there's a bit of credit there. That just goes to show that I've been around long enough that I've established my own sound. But the track was released. It came out in, what was it? I think it was September, October. No, I made it in September, October. I think it came out November of 2018. So it was a while after that, but it was good to know that I had a track out there, and I got it released, and I was buzzing for it. I was like, hell yeah, man, I got a track out. Anyways, a few more months pass after that, and then Dave contacts me again, and he says, look, you did a good job with Passion. Do you want to remix Broken Bones? And I'm just like, fuck, you're kidding me, man. Like, Broken Bones, one of my favorite tracks ever. I'm like, Love Inc. I'm like, you serious? Hell yeah, man. Again, he's like, I did a track some years ago. KCB did a mix of it as well. It was in the late 2000s. We reckon we'll give you a crack. We'll give you a go with it. And it'll be your remix. It'll be Dave Austin and KCB, Broken Bones, Nick Nova remix. I'm like, cool. Let's get to work. Man, if I didn't spend the most amount of time I've ever spent on a track on this one here, I'd be lying to you. The constant changes of melodies, of bass lines, of structures and patterns and everything in between. But I finally got there in the end. And what we have as the end product, as the end result, is the track that you always hear myself or Charlie play, and the Broken Bones, my remix. And that's probably my most popular track, I think, on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken. It's out there. It's very different. It's not like the original. It wasn't meant to sound like the original. I wanted to change it up as best as I could while still keeping original elements in there, but it is nothing like the original. Alex K did a remix as well. I think it was last year, and his one is basically exactly like the original, but remade with different sounds, if you will. And I could have gone down that road, but I thought, no, you know what, I want to make something that's creatively my own, that is different, that is distinguishable as not being related to the original track. And that's what we have, the Broken Bones we have now. And over time, I just got more confident in my music. I got more confident in writing my chord structures. I got more confident in my bass lines. I got more confident in just making music and playing it myself. And I've done countless bootlegs and remixes and even some original work since then. Goosebumps is my most recent one. That's a full remix from an acapella. Whoopty as well, remix from an acapella. I've also done some bootlegs like Pascal Jr.'s Time. I've done Azalea Banks and Young J 212. That's a bootleg over the top, but again, I've added some of my own elements over the original tracks. I've done a remix of IO's At the End with Charlie Brown as well, and that's again done from a resung a cappella. I mean, Charlie Brown and I done More Than Friends, or Don't Let Go is what we're meant to call it here. That was a bootleg of who was it? DJ's name escapes me now. Bloody hell. Don't Let Go. I can't remember, one popular DJ, house DJ. Damn, I can't remember the name, but it was basically a bootleg off the original, and it just so happened that we got it resung, and we just went off the bootleg structure, and we just redid the original track, and we have the anthem that we have today. I mean, it's 2 to 3 years old now, but it's only really growing legs now later on in life, so it's never too late for tracks to explode and to blow up. I mean, look at Sunset Brothers In The Air. That track came out in 2013, 14, something to that. It was like, what, track 10 or track 13 on some mix that they did in the mid 2010s, and only in 2017, 2018 it actually took off and grew legs. I mean, you never know when a track's gonna explode, and now look at it, man. They're touring all over Australia. They're in and out of Europe. They got private shows. I mean, they're selling out the the Mill 2 nights in a row. I mean, that's madness, and from one track, and you never know when your track may come to pass and really make it out there. So you just never know. But that's basically where we're at now. And then with the music production, I now DJ with Charlie and Dave, and amongst other DJs as well at certain events. I've done Summer Jam on New Year's Day. We've done Winter Jam for Queen's birthday long weekend, both of them at the Albion Hotel. And we know through COVID, we've had to put a pause on them, but hopefully they'll be back soon. But again, in saying that, I've also done clubs, done the boat parties most recently. Over the last few years, I've been a resident at the Albion Hotel on Saturdays, where I get to play my own music. I mean, I couldn't give two shits if there's one person in the courtyard or 100 people in the courtyard. I get to play my own tracks. And I tell you what, there hasn't been a Saturday where I have played there where I haven't had people at least bumping their heads and grooving up and down, because you play some classics, you play some old tracks, and then you play some of the newer stuff, and people just get into it, man. It's crazy. It's so good to see people having fun and enjoying themselves. Also, there have been some club gigs as well. I've worked with Dave for his Crowbar. We've also done events where we've put on things ourselves. We've had some Forever Energy parties. There have been so many things out there that have happened now because I got back into music production. I mean, I could still be DJing, playing other people's music, but I think there is that natural progression to make your own music and be your own artist. That seems to be the way to go these days. I mean, same with like Tiesto and Armin van Buuren. I mean, the biggest producer DJs in the world, and they may have started playing other people's tracks and now they make their own. And Tiesto's ventured off into his own subgenre of house or whatever the hell he's making now, because that's how you flow with the time. Same with Armin van Buuren. He went from uplifting trance, now he's making side trance, and now he's also making dance pop, house pop, whatever it's called. I mean, it's crazy. It really is crazy how these music trends move along the way in the modern age. And what's around for 6 months, 6 months later, it's gone, absolutely gone. There is nothing that really keeps music around these days longer than probably what its shelf life is, unless it's still kept around by the die-hard fans. And that's what we have with energy. We have die-hard fans, a lot old, but also a lot new. A lot of new blood is coming through the ranks, and it's nice to see people are still recognizing the likes of Alex K and the work they've done. Nick Skitz as well. I mean, seeing Skitzy at the Greenwood for the Wild reunion, he was taking photos with guys who I actually heard them say to him, because, man, my dad is a massive fan of yours. He's not going to believe I took a photo with you. He used to listen to you all the time when he was like my age or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just shit like that is just magical, man. You can't put a price tag on that shit. And to think that some people give this stuff up because they don't go anywhere with it. And I'm not trying to be inspirational or be sappy or be wankery about any of this crap, but me, I was a nobody. I mean, I still consider myself a nobody. That's just me up here. That's just how I see myself. I'm still a nobody. I'm just a dude that makes music and is fortunate enough to be connected with some of the nicest, finest people in our circle of the world when it comes to our specific type of music. And I'm thankful that I get to play it and play my own music and take center stage and have people know who I am and request that I play certain tracks for them and want to take a photo with me and share my music and just appreciate that I've actually done something that makes them happy. I mean, now I probably understand the buzz that these guys get when they see people going off enjoying their tunes. I mean, for so long, I wanted to be like an Alex K. I wanted to be like a Sunset Brothers. Then you get to know them, and you're like, okay, I know them. How do I get to their level? And then even so thinking, how do I leapfrog and jump them as well? That's very difficult to do, especially when you are still, a small fish in a big pond. These boys are big fish in small ponds in comparison, but it goes with the territory. I don't know, man. To sum it up, I guess maybe I got lucky. Maybe it was a twist of fate that Dave happened to call me on an autumn afternoon in August of 2017 and asked me to start making music again, because here I am, I'm back again, and I've got people listening to what I have to say when it comes to my musical story and my background. I've got people listening to my music. I've got people going out to see me DJ. I've met so many friends. I've met so many people there who I probably never would have met if it wasn't for the music side of things. So I'll be thankful to Dave Austin always, and Charlie Brown, for giving me the chance to play in regular venues and showcase my music, and to work with them as well. And you know, who the hell knows what the future's going to bring. But man, all I can say for music, if you really want to get into it, do get into it, man. It's never too late to start, especially these days. You've got tutorials at your fingertips, man. Literally, like keyboard, mouse, and a computer. That's all you need. You can even look at stuff on your phone. You just search what you want. How to make EDM in FL Studio. Bang. There'll be countless tutorials on how to write chords, how to write melodies, bass lines, drops, kicks, all that sort of stuff. It's all there. Once you've taken that knowledge in, it's down to you to apply it yourself. Okay, I know what I need to do. Let me get cracking. Let me put the Lego blocks together now. Because before it was like, I have Lego blocks, but I have no idea how to put them together. Now I know how to put them together. And it just takes a little bit of patience, takes a little bit of determination, and it takes focus as well to really hone in on what you need to learn in order to get where you want to go. There's a problem to solve. Okay, I need to make chords. I need to be better at making melodies. Okay, how do I do it? Okay, understand what the chords are, understand how they're made, understand what they do, what purpose they serve, and then go from there. So understand what you need to do and then build up on that. Yes, that's all I can tell you. And holy shit, man, I've rambled on for over an hour on this whole thing. I guess that's what happens when I just start going on tangents about production and the early days and getting into it, and when I started, when I stopped, and everything else in between. But I guess there was a lot to be said, because that is really the main side of it, really. I mean, the DJing side apart, I mean, 30 odd minute little stories, fair enough, but the production side, this is what I am known as these days. I'm not known as the DJ in particular. I'm known as the artist, the producer. That's who I am. And that's probably where the main story lies, is I got to where I wanted to be. I wanted to be a producer. I wanted to make music. I wanted people to know and appreciate my music. And I've hit that level now. And I'm thankful. And I never thought I'd get to this particular point. But holy shit, man, it's been a massive ride. And through everything that's happened in between, with personal shit, with people, with friends, with clubs that have closed, with conflicts between DJs and other DJs, etc., etc., you know, we probably still wouldn't be here at this very point. So I'll wrap it up with saying thank you very much for having listened to this very, very long third part. I hope you enjoyed the first and second parts as well. And if I have missed out something, if you recall, my apologies. It's hard to try and remember so many things from 15 years ago, even though I haven't hit the age of Alzheimer's yet. It is to be said that there is a lot to remember when it comes to music and the career, shall we say, that I've taken on. So yeah, I just want to say thank you once again, and yeah, keep listening, and I'll keep making music, and I'll keep playing it for you guys, for you to enjoy, to have fun, and I guess I'll see you on the dance floor.